Yes, welcome friends.
வாணிகம் செய்வார்க்கு வாணிகம் பேணி பிறவும் தமபோல் செய்யின் பிறர் பொருளையும் தம் பொருள் போல் போற்றிச் செய்தால் அதுவே வாணிகம் செய்வோருக்கு உரிய நல்ல வாணிக முறையாகும். This verse says, those who are in business must be fair, just and impartial in their business dealings with other business people as well as their customers, and protect the interest of customers or other business people as their own. Yeah, good evening, friends. Let's offer thanks to God for the wonderful day we have had with a silent invocation. I now request President Sharath to call himself and call the meeting to order.
Welcome friends. The second weekly speaker meeting of Rotary Club of Guindy is called to order.
Yes. Thank you, Sharath. The rotary four-way test can be applied to almost any aspect of life. Request Rotarian Satyanarayanan to deliver the four-way test.
Good evening, friends. Four-way test of the things that we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendship? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you.
To invite positive intention, I request Rotarian Shankar to share a thought for the day.
Good evening, RCGN and friends. Thought for the day: a good plan implemented today is better than a perfect plan implemented tomorrow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you all for joining the weekly meeting today. I request President Sharath to welcome the gathering.
Friends, good evening. And thank you for all your cooperation. And I'm sure we will have a wonderful Rotary year. So, right from last week to this week, last Wednesday to this Wednesday, we have had around 4 to 5 wonderful events. So on Saturday, we had one event called Mati Mugudam. So this was in recognition for the work done by the team, last year team, 1920. And as expected, our team won loads and loads of awards, which was in recognition for all the hard work and the good service we have rendered to the communities around us. The title being apt, Mani Mugudam, it is very apt for our president, immediate past president, Shiva, who had a wonderful Shiva Tandavam last year. And our club is one of the top 3 clubs in Rotary District 3232. So we are very proud of that, and we should really cheer with a loud applause for all of us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, President Sharath, Secretary Bala, and all my friends in RCG and the invited guests. Thank you so much. On behalf of the board 1920 and the RCG, I take pleasure in thanking each one of you to accomplish the Silver Jubilee year. It was a great moment to be the Silver Jubilee president. Thank you so much. I think the RCG DNA or RCG grace has been maintained. Thank you so much for everyone. I don't want to take much time. Thank you, Sharath.
And on Sunday, it was a packed Sunday. We had a new concept called Members Corner. So Naresh Kumar shared all his adventures, cycling expeditions, and it was a wonderful meeting. It was amazing. So it was actually slated for 1 hour. It almost took 2 hours because the amount of adventures he had done was, we couldn't say no to that. It was wonderful. Then after that, we had Arogyam Kitchen by Malika Badrinath. We were one of the participating clubs. And evening, we had a wonderful fireside with Dr. Anuradha and family. And here we are on Wednesday for the second weekly meeting. And I would just like to thank the members of Rotary Club of Guindy, families, co-presidents, co-secretaries, friends from other Rotary clubs, road tractors, interactors, friends, and special invites who are attending this meet. And we have a few guests who would like to become our members, but right now they are just invited as a guest, not a prospect. Dr. Ravina Jagdish, Kamalika Krishmai, Anil Agarwal, Sriram, and Muthukannan. Welcome. Thank you, Bala.
Yeah, thank you, Sharath. To think fondly of the past and to learn from it is priceless. I request PP Jagannath Ramasamy to travel back in time and share with us some treasures from the past.
Well, I don't know whether it's treasures from the past, it could be dirt being dug up also from the past. My address to you today would be 4 parts. Don't worry, each one will be a few seconds only. You have to go back to 1973 when I was a member of the Rotaract Club of IIT Kanpur. All I remember from then was the fundraising, which was whenever there was an event in which there were a lot of Rotary clubs in Kanpur, we used to go and clean the cars which were parked outside of the Rotarians, and they would give us money. That was our fundraiser. I was the international director, so my room walls in the hostel were very well decorated with large posters from various consulates and embassies and airlines. Okay. For me was Rotarians are rich businessmen and they are well connected. Up to 1992, when I was invited to Rotary Club of Madras Uptown, which was RI District 323, grandfather of the current District 323. I still remember my intro speech. I thought it was terrible, but others thought pretty good. The lunch was, incidentally, the meeting used to be lunch meeting at Palm Grove. And I saw that some people were always bang on time. I mean, as a matter of fact, they were before time over there, while the rest of us used to struggle a few minutes.
Jagibai, you can be a bit louder, Jagibai.
Okay. I have this lunch meeting in Palm Grove, and some people always used to come very much on time or even before time. And I used to wonder why. And I realized that there was a bar called Ramba Bar in Palm Grove, into which all these people will go in at 12. Then the meeting started at 1, they would come back and hydrated into the meeting. And obviously they were on time. And they all spoke about Raspberry, which I believe is excellent over there. So my next statement was Rotarians. After 1995, when I was shunted from Uptown to BP, Google members, Google meetings, luxury meetings meant alumni club. I was the president 2002-2003, perhaps the most uneventful year in the entire RCP history. We're all frogs in a well. The district was only a gossip. The takeaway then was Rotarians meet in small groups, bond, and do small projects out of subscription money. In 2011, internationally, Bin Laden was killed, Gaddafi was killed, Cyclone Thane ravaged India, and in RCG, there was a tsunami. A major force from an outer galaxy came and invaded RCG. Still remember the installation of our President Anandan, in which I was the NC. In those days, we never looked at the NC's face so much. So people like me could also be the NCs. And believe it or not, one after the other, members started joining RCG. From about, I think 24, thereabouts. Suddenly, I think almost 40, but one after the other, people coming in, they were all migrating from Galaxy. And what I understood then was that Rotarians also have ambition, and never wrong for having ambition. And I actually, my throat got hoarse, calling names of new members joining one after the other. The chief guest, I don't remember who it was. I think it was the governor or the governor-elect. 2011 was when the tsunami struck RCG. Force from outer galaxy came and invaded RCG. And suddenly our numbers doubled, or more than doubled. I was the MC at the installation of the president that year. And I should probably repeat it for other. In those days, we didn't bother so much about the looks of the MC. And I still remember how I really went hoarse, calling names of new members joining one after the other. It was almost like an auction. One coming, right now the number is 26, 27, 28, 29, and so on and so forth. Till we reached some large number. Finish it within 5 minutes, as the president warned me I should.
Secretary Bala, you can please take over.
Yes, thank you, Sharath. Now, Lieutenant Venugopal will now share with us about the project of our club for the benefit of the RCG members. I request Venugopal.
Venuji, I will first, you can keep talking. I will share the slide. Venuji? Yeah, I will
Venuji, unmute
share the
yourself.
slide. Yeah. Venuji, I will share the slide. Just hold on.
Good evening, friends. One of the details that I thought I could share with you is one of our first projects at the Rotary Club of Guindy, which was Hoina. Incidentally, for the information of members, we were chartered in 1995. In the very first year of charter, one of the projects that we had taken up was to adopt an orphanage at Hindernoor called Hoina. For all members who have traveled towards Alatur, I should tell you that we have been crossing this particular premises every time we have gone to Alatur. Presently, you would see the board of Jaya Engineering College there. Hoina housed about 50 orphaned children, all children from displaced homes or with parents who were into doing everything other than taking care of their children. Hoina was promoted by an American couple, Mrs. Darling and Large. True to his name, Mr. Large was truly large. But the couple were amazingly large-hearted, and the love, care, and attention that they gave to the children was simply amazing. I can assure you, and all the charter members would vouch even to this moment, that if you could walk into Hoina any time of the day or in the evening, you would find the entire premises, including the dormitories, being spick and span, beds neatly laid, the children very disciplined. It is simply an amazing place to visit it. There were as many handicapped children as healthy children, and the lodge ensured that the children were sent to school, their education was fully taken care of, hygiene were fully taken care of. And this is one of the projects that we started way back in '95, thanks to our charter member and past president, the late R.N. Prasad. I must mention about Rotarian R.N. Prasad that if today, even after 25 years, if in our district and amidst all the Rotarians that I have met, if there is one man who showed so much of phenomenal commitment in taking care of the needy, it would be R.N. Prasad. I still recall that one of the handicapped child who was polio affected, he carried her all the way from Chennai to the US for a corrective surgery, spent 2 weeks in the US, ensured the surgery was successful before he returned to Chennai. That was the kind of commitment Arun Prasad had towards the children and the home. I must also recall in the same breath that few of our members made it a point to celebrate their children's birthday. And in that list, if I could recall, it would be BK Midha, Vishy, and one of our past members, Rotarian Venkat Ramani. They were absolutely committed in consistently going year on year to celebrate their children's birthday with the children in Hoina. The other person I must mention is Rotarian Sithani. Diwali was a day to be remembered of celebrations at Hoina, and it was Sithani and family which took care to ensure that there was enough fireworks at the place, and the entire children and all the children there looked forward to meeting all of us during Diwali, and the performances that they used to put out for us was indeed heart-rending. And so our annex too joined impromptu to entertain the children at Hoina. Today, they have shifted the campus from Tirunallur to a large spread out campus at Bapatla in Andhra Pradesh, where they have the home for the boys and the girls, and they run one of the best schools in the district in Bapatla. I certainly must say that to date, I am yet to see an orphanage of the standards that were maintained by Darlene and Large at Hoina. Indeed, we did our first matching grant project for Hoina, providing them bunker beds, kitchen utensils, and an auto rickshaw. This was followed by the second matching grant for providing them a school bus and calipers for all the handicapped children. That was a continuing project, and thereon started the philosophy of continuity in community service and health projects that we have undertaken to these dates. Nostalgic, certainly it is for me, and for all the charter members of our club who have contributed immensely in sharing their love and affection with the children at Hoina, and we still hold in respect the Darlene and Large for the phenomenal commitment they had for Chennai, India, and now at Bapatla. Thank you, friends.
Thank you, Venuji. Thank you, Venuji. Jabala, I would like to thank Venuji for just giving us a lot of inputs on Hoina. Honestly, I also don't know so much information about Hoina. Thank you, Venuji. And I would like to recognize once again our special invitee guest, Dr. Praveena Jagdish, Kamalika Krishmi, Anil Agarwal, Sriram, Muthukannan, and Suresh Jumani. And the members will know why I'm thanking them once again, maybe after we finish the membership process, which is still yet to start. Thank you once again. Bala, it's to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharath, and thank you, Venuji. Speaker meetings have always been looked forward to at RCG, as RCGians are very eager to observe and absorb what the speaker has to say. I inviting Rotarian Kritika Modhu to introduce our speaker for the day.
Very good evening, friends. It's my privilege and honor to introduce the speaker of the evening, Mr. V. Muralidharan. With a strong foundation in finance from CIMA London, is recognized for conceptualizing, detailing, and rolling out successful new working business models, embedding marketing, branding, and management concepts. He has a total work experience of over 43 years and has held several senior positions in his career, including VP India, Lifestyle International, Head Mall Business Future Group, Business Head Splash UAE, and Advisor Retail Reliance Industries. His previous employers include Madura Coats, TTK Prestige, General Motors, Middle East. He is the principal consultant and founder of MAPS Retail Resources, established in 2004, and his clientele includes SMEs as well as large corporates in Sri Lanka. A strong believer in hand-holding consultative model Murali undertakes focused, result-oriented, and time-bound consulting assignments for his clients. Murali is the recipient of Brand Slam Leadership Award by CMO Council, endorsed by CMO Asia in the year 2012. On the personal front, Mr. Murali is blessed with a very understanding and a supportive life companion. Padmini, a maths postgraduate homemaker. His daughter Sindhuja, a MS from Ohio State University, is married and now lives with her husband in London. His hobbies include photography, music, creative writing, and in his younger days captained a cricket team in the Middle East. He loves to travel and he does speak several languages. With no further delay, let's call upon Mr. Muralidharan. The floor is all yours. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for the introduction. I don't know whether I deserve all these flamboyant words, but anyway, nice to be with the Rotarian fraternity. Fellow Rotarians, I'm also a Rotarian like you. I come from Rotary Club of Madras Central, and I'm also actively participating in some of the initiatives of the Rotary Club in our this thing. Once again, thanks Rotary Club of Guindy for giving this opportunity. I don't know the subject, whether it's sort of so interesting to many people, but I think it's a subject which probably gets reminded only when there is a disaster. A lot of companies, small entrepreneurs, business houses, family businesses especially, they come to a standstill mainly because they find that, oh my God, something happened to the head of the family or the head of the business. And then, a lot of people start thinking what to do next. Okay? So I'm here to talk very briefly about the concept of succession planning, which is not exactly a new subject. Honestly, a lot of people know about it. A lot of people are doing it in a way, but then there is a way of doing it in a structured manner. And then I believe that it is not just an event that has to happen. It is a continuous process. We unfortunately do not remember this. And then, like I said, we only remember this when there's a disaster that is called upon. Anyway, let's go back to the family business as a concept. See, invariably, globally, as a matter of fact, about 70 to 80% of the businesses are actually controlled by family business. We all think about the country being a corporate, ruled by the corporate world and things like that. Honestly, no. Even the corporates, so-called corporates, are actually family-run businesses. Even if you take Ambani's or the Birlas and Tatas, eventually they come up or end up, running the company with family values, with family concepts and things like that. So, in simple words, family businesses are actually the ones which contribute the highest, GDP in most of the countries. I've given a slide there which talks about most of the countries having more than 70% of the contribution coming from family businesses, especially in India, for that matter. The contribution to GDP from family business is more than 70%, and this is a published figure from an association called the Family Business Network, based in Switzerland. And for those who are in family businesses who want to become members, you can please Google Family Business Network Switzerland. They have a branch in India in collaboration with CII, so I can actually become a member of that club and get a lot of benefits out of being in associations. At the same time, many of the entrepreneurs, in fact, I was going through some of the profile of the Guindy clubs, and including my own club as well. Many of us are actually can be classified into MSMEs. So even MSMEs are family-run business again, and they contribute more than about 35% in our GDP to our country. So in simple words, significance of family businesses is quite, remarkable and quite, pronounced, I would say. And in addition to, contributing to GDP, what they actually do is they create jobs. Okay? We may think that we are hiring a driver, we are hiring a, house help, or we are hiring somebody at home to help your kitchen, but actually they are generating employment. So a family business also generates a lot of employment. And the other good part about family business, not only here, but globally, is that there is a sense of balancing in the development in a region. For example, in South India, you'll find that TVS Groups is very predominantly, occupying most of the businesses' houses. Similarly, if you go to western part of India, It's the Bajajes, it's the Tatas, it's the Ambanis, it's the Gujarati businesses and things like that, even Adanis. So if you go up to the north, if you go look at the companies which are headed by some of the family businesses in the north, so they again develop the regional industrial economy. So in a way that each of these families contribute not only for the GDP but also in the regional development of every part of the country, which is really significant. Okay, and of course, as the family businesses grow and flourish, they also raise the standard of living in the society that they are placed in. So that's another important part. And of course, as you know, most of the exports done from India, whether it is textiles or whether it is industrial products or whether it is even food products for that matter, are all actually from family businesses. So in simple words, the contribution from the family business is quite significant, as a matter of fact. And coming to the extension of family businesses to corporate this thing, there is a simple list, which talks about 3 countries. In fact, 3 countries which are having businesses but family owned, but again they are publicly listed companies. And believe me, India is number 3 in the world. China is a country where 167 companies are actually family-run businesses but are listed. USA has got 121 companies which are family-run businesses but are listed. And India is no less. We are having 108 companies which are family-run businesses and also are publicly listed. In simple words, even the stock markets in many ways.
Murli, can I share the PPT what you had given, or do you want me to share
Please,
it?
please go ahead. Please go ahead. I would like you to share this, if possible, on screen, or otherwise also you can mail it to everybody. I mean, they can look at it at leisure. Yeah.
Little louder.
Little louder. Okay, fine.
Okay. Guys, are you able to see the screen?
You put him under pressure. It's very much audible.
It's okay. I'm good. No problem. No,
Are you able to see
Sir,
the
we can see
used
it.
to-
Yes, Sharath.
Okay.
Yeah, go to the, slide number 4, I think, some facts and figures. You can just brush through. I just spoke about it, all these things, yeah. Then this one, yeah. If you see here, amongst the countries which are having companies or family-owned companies and which are publicly listed, China is on the top, followed by USA and followed by India. So India is actually ranking number 3 in the world where family businesses run the corporate world, as a matter of fact. And in terms of the market capitalization globally, we are in the 22nd position with an average market cap value of about approximately $6.5 billion. Again, this is an average, so it's not representative for a particular company. So let's go to the next one. Now, the important part about the family business in India, again, this is a published report by PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC. It says 75% of the family businesses have actually grown in the last 1 year. Well, pandemic or not, I don't know, but I think it definitely will not have reduced in terms of business volume. Yes?
No, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Yeah. 75% of the family businesses in India have grown in the last 12 months, maybe 3-4 months because of the pandemic. It might have had a setback, but I think the family businesses are here to grow. And about 84% of the people who run family businesses expect to grow quickly or aggressively in the next 5 years. It means a lot of people are actually looking at an aggressive growth in the following 5 years to come. And of course, about 50-55% or 56% of the Indian family businesses also they have a realization that it's time for them to change. It's time for them to innovate, because the next 5 years is going to be going to face a lot of challenge. And obviously, with the pandemic now coming into the scenario, a lot of things may also have to be readjusted. Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah. See, coming back to the MSME, which is your micro and small and medium establishments. So here again, if you look at the industry, for example, the manufacturing industry, I've just given a small chart for you to just realize that the total number of family businesses in different types of employment, for example, 0 to 10, 10, 11 to 50, and 50 to 51 to 250, you'll find that majority of them, even though they are employing smaller number of people, they're actually family-run businesses. They are not non-family or corporate businesses. Go to the next slide, please. Similarly, the construction industry, building industry. Here again, in India, these family businesses dominate in terms of the numbers, whether it is a small company employing only 10 employees or whether it is a large company employing between 51 to 250 employees. So the next part, again, going back to the services, and next slide, please. Here again, doctors, professionals, hospitals, you name any service-oriented companies, travel agents, and things like that, there again, most of them are family-run business. If you see the numbers here, it talks by itself. It says almost only 50% of the businesses run in the service industry are actually non-family businesses, which are corporate. But more than that, the family businesses do dominate in this, which means the construction industry, the manufacturing industry, and the service industry are actually dominated by the family businesses. For those who are interested in getting to know more about the networking in the family businesses, I've given the next slide. There is this organization called Family Business Network, FBN. This is the logo actually. And this is based out of Lausanne in Switzerland. And they have, in collaboration with CII in India, a similar network, business network here. And there are more than 300 companies listed in that, including companies like TVS, GMR, Murugappa Group, and TCM Shriram. This is for information in case any of you who own industries or family businesses want to get into this networking. Is definitely a useful information, I hope. Next slide, please. Of course, there are some top companies. I have not listed all of them, but I have just taken a few of them. One interesting fact that you will see in most of these family businesses, for example, Tata, Murugappa Group, Dabur, for example, okay, all these companies are actually almost a century plus old. It also has something to convey to all of us. Most of us think that my business will die after my period is over. I don't know whether my family is continuing my business. So most of the family businesses do not actually survive, but those who have survived, they survive in fact for many centuries. In fact, coming back to the family businesses, there is a butcher in the UK. I forgot the name of the company. It's about 546-year-old company. Okay, they still serve or service the meat supplies to the Queen of England from that time. It's a family-run business. It's been there for almost 5 centuries, as a matter of fact. So in India, some of the family-run businesses like Dabur, Tata, Murugappa Group, and followed by TVS, the next slide, all of them are more than a century old. Of course, there are many other examples. I'm sorry for lack of time. I'm not taking all the name of the companies. There are hundreds of them who are really successful, and they have done a very, I would say, effective succession planning, and thereby, even though the family continues to, go over generations, the company remains over, centuries. As a matter of fact, TVS is another example where there is a professionally managed company, and they also believe in succession planning, which is another topic, by the way. But again, a family-run business can also survive beyond, generations. This is a simple fact of life. Now, what are the challenges? Can I go to the next slide, please? Yeah. What are the challenges that faces the family business in India? Can you believe that only 15% of the family businesses actually have a documented and a clearly communicated succession plan? They do not tell the next generation, or they do not plan for the next generation to take over from the current generation that is actually running the business. The first time, entrepreneurs generally do not do it for the sake, because they think they can do everything, and they do it themselves because they think they are the best to doing something, and therefore they don't even transfer the knowledge. In fact, one of the things which I always keep telling many people here, about 300 to 400 years ago, there was a system in India where knowledge was transferred by way of mouth, by way of audio and hearing. Unfortunately, in our generation, especially the present generation, we do not transfer knowledge generation to generation. So it also reflects on the fact that we do not have a proper succession planning which is communicated to the next generation. Very unfortunate, but it's a matter of fact. 35% of the people in India still plan, but then we are left with 65% who do not plan, as a matter of fact, for succession to the next generation. And of course, many people, almost 50% of the people in India, they believe that, let me educate my children, let them go to Harvard, let them go to one of the best business schools here, they can probably professionally manage. But how much successful are they? I'm not very sure about it, but then it's definitely a good step towards making it more professionally run. Can you go to the next slide, please? One what happens in family businesses? Okay, frankly speaking, yes, people are there. People have differences in terms of thinking, differences in terms of opinion. Some of them are dominant, some of them are subdued, some of them are docile, some of them do not speak up, some of them speak up more than what they should. So all this leads to a certain amount of confusion in the way the business is run, and there's always a difference of opinion. There's no consensus many times, and obviously this leads to conflicts. So these are all the basic problems. Of course, this is also common to a family, as a matter of fact. But when it comes to business, now these kind of confusions or differences or even conflicts, they actually are a threat to the growth of the family business, unfortunately. Well, we don't realize it, but then we feel that, okay, my opinion has to be heard in this company, therefore I'm right and I need to be, the boss here. This unfortunately results in many times the failure of the organization, very unfortunately. Within the family, of course, we can always sort it out because it's within the family. But when it comes to business, a lot of things are at stake. The property, the assets that the family has earned over centuries, or even the ancestral property sometimes get into trouble, mainly because of the confusion, because of differences, conflicts, and obviously because of all this, the legacy of the family itself is always at risk. And obviously this leads up many times to breakups. I don't know whether you have noticed it very carefully. My request to all of you is this: if possibly, whenever you go to the next, whenever you go out next, obviously it's nowadays we have a lockdown here, but when the markets open, please go and take a photograph in your mobile camera and keep it in memory for about 3 months, and then go back to the same spot and take another photograph from the same spot. You will find that in the same street, you will find different names of boards of different companies. It only means that there are many companies who have died in that 3 or 4 months period. It's a very simple reflection of how we do not feel, it's important for us to be together in order to make sure that our family business is run successfully, not now, but over a period of time, and maybe sometimes even centuries. Next slide, please. So what threatens, as a matter of fact? We have also changed in our society. Okay, we used to have, the joint family system some time ago, maybe a couple of decades ago, but then that's also breaking up. We are now talking about nuclear family, 1 child, 2 children, or whatever. So all these are, going towards what we call as individualism. So what happens is I, me, my values, my thoughts, my plans, my life, my aspirations all become more important than the family. So obviously this is also a result of how society has changed, the way family run businesses are being looked into, and therefore this is a threat, as a matter of fact. I'm not saying that we should have a joint family. That's not the issue here. The issue is about cooperation. The issue is about coming together in consensus. Yes, there will be differences between human beings always, but then the question is one of a common goal or a common objective of making sure that the family business survives despite the differences in opinions and also in views. Yeah. Next slide, please. Why differences? Obviously, because of the perspectives, because of the vision, and the most important, I would say, the difference comes over when 1 or 2 of the family members start dominating, and they feel that they know more than the rest of the family, which is also possibly right. But the point is, they may know more than the rest of the family, but unfortunately, they may not know more about the business. Very unfortunately. So this is why a difference happens within the family, where a particular individual or group of individuals start dominating, and they start getting into a different vision, and then the whole, the process of growth gets stunted, unfortunately. Now, what can be done? How can we survive? I would like to go to the next slide, please. So what we need to understand is that 2 things: family and businesses are different. Okay, family continues to have generations over generations, but then when it comes to business, the family has to be together over generations to generations. That's the simple way of explaining it. So we need to have what we call as succession planning. What's the meaning of succession? Succession does not mean that somebody has to die, somebody has to leave, or somebody has to be thrown away. No. Succession is basically where we organize to make sure that the next generation conveniently takes over the current business in a way that it sustains. I don't know whether you are aware of it or not. Tata is a simple example. Always keeps the next chairman under training for 5 years before he is made chairman. I'm sure many of you would know it. So this is a very simple way of ensuring that the company does not suffer because an individual has left the company or wants to leave the company or retire from the services of the company. So in simple words, in terms of statistics, 33% of the family businesses do not survive. I mean, sorry, less than 33% of the family business actually survive, which means 67% of the family business do not survive beyond 2 generations. Very unfortunate. Yeah. And only 1 in 10 survive on the 3rd generation, by the way. You can see the difference here and how, because of non-recognition of the importance and significance of succession planning, the family actually goes down. I'm sure many of us have had even histories. And for example, my father used to say my great-grandfather was a very big, rich man, and I'm not, and we are not, because I don't know if there was no succession planning that happened probably in our own family. And this must be a reflection in most of the families as well. So succession planning is very key, a very important thing that has to be thought about, and how we are going to plan how things are to be changed over the next generation has to be thought over by the existing generation. So succession planning is something that has to be put into place. And what is succession planning, by the way? It's not a project. It's not a project. It is not one-day affair. As a matter of fact, it's a continuous process. And it is not about sending your son to Harvard or sending your daughter to the best business school to learn business. Very unfortunately, many business schools in India do not teach how to run family businesses. Many business schools in India, I'm sorry to say, some of you may come from colleges, even I'm actually a faculty in college. Most of the students are prepared for getting a job. They're not prepared for running their own family business or even becoming an entrepreneur for that matter. So in simple words, succession planning is not a project. It's an ongoing process. Yes, you can definitely get help of education from business schools, but there are specialized business programs, MBA programs, especially schools like ISB, Narsee Monjee in Mumbai, SP Jain, I think Nirma School of Business in Ahmedabad. Even Harvard has got a program for family business. It's about a year and maybe year and a half program. So succession planning has to have a sort of orientation to the next generation where they learn or they are taught how to run the family business when it comes to next generation. Now we are coming to the final stage. I'm just going to recap how things have to be done. Having said that it's important to have succession planning, I would like to go to the next slide. Yeah. There are about 6 important elements in any family businesses which needs to be looked into in terms of succession planning. Okay. What are those? I'll just quickly summarize it before we go into detail. A family business has to grow. You can't have a business which is stagnant. Obviously, when the family becomes larger over generations, it can't just maintain a same sale or same growth same sales volume because it will probably be losing its market share. So growth is as important as a growing person. We need to grow as a human being. Definitely a family business also has to grow in that sense. Now, the second part of succession planning is how do we manage. I want you to remain the same slide, please. We'll go to the next slide a little later. Yeah. Can you go back to the previous slide? Thank you. Yeah. The risk management. Okay. See, family business also owns family assets. Okay. Sometimes private, sometimes individually named, but then they all know that it's a family property and therefore it can be put into use when it's required for the business. So I have seen many companies or families pledging or mortgaging their entire family property and risking their entire family property for a business which may not have been run in a very professional manner. So how do you manage the risk of the assets of the family? In fact, I used to say this to everybody. Actually, it's sometimes good to be born in a middle class or upper middle class family. You know why? Because we don't have a problem of managing so many assets. But when you're born in a rich family with what they say silver spoon or golden spoon, the problem is not only about running business, but also about protecting the assets. So obviously you need to understand that in succession planning, how does one plan to ensure that the risk is minimized. Therefore, the assets of the families are protected over generations. And you can take hundreds of examples. You can go to Google and really look at a lot of family business history, and you will find that many of them actually sunk mainly because they risk the entire assets to the business, which again is not a very wise thing to do. The third critical part when it comes to succession planning is the governance. How does a family manage the business? What are the rules? What are the regulations? What kind of practices one has to follow? Many times we say that, no, it's our family tradition. Yes, family tradition is good, no doubt about it. But the question is, sometimes the family tradition can become, obsolete. It may not be applicable to the present generation. So how does one change, or how does one update oneself or one family business in terms of governance, in terms of understanding how to run the business in a different circumstance? For example, a family business right now, soon after the pandemic is over now, how do you really start recouping your losses, and how do you really start making more money? So is again going back to how we are going to govern, how you are really going to manage the entire business. And of course, the wealth part. Wealth management is, of course, not new subject to anybody. All of you, I'm sure, have their own portfolios of wealth in terms of shares, properties, gold, and things like that. So how does one family manage the same thing? Where does it put money? Where does it put or parks its money to make sure that the wealth does not erode because of the problems in their business? So that's how the management has to be looked into as far as the wealth is concerned of the family, which means the wealth has to be continuously maintained and probably even grow over generations and over generations. And then the most critical part again is, how does one transit between two generations? What are the methods that we use to hand over? For example, the one thing which I liked about Rotary, and I'm really happy about being a member of Rotary, is how they choose their presidents in advance. The transition is so smooth, and whether a president is A or B or C, the club is the same. Yeah, and there's no disturbance or there's no change in the way things are managed. Yeah, of course, there are personal differences when it comes to different presidents, so that's fine. But then the transition is very smooth as far as Rotary is concerned. In fact, I always take this example to my students and also to people who want to take the subject, is that Rotary is an excellent example where the transition is always organized very well and definitely made very smooth over a period of time. And there is no confusion there. There's no break. There's no hiccup in that kind of transition part. People, obviously, an organization, family cannot run without people. You need to understand how to manage people. When it says people, it also means the family, the members of the family, and then obviously the organization, the management, the people, the staff, the workers, and of course those who are concerned with you. For example, your partners like vendors, your bankers, everybody. That also comes into play when it comes to how you manage succession planning. So these are 6 elements which I'm going to just run through in a very short while. I don't know whether I'm running out of time. Please warn me. It's about 8 o'clock here. So I'll just take another 5 to 10 minutes and I'm probably done with this. But I would recommend that the presentation be shared with everybody through email, so you can go through this at leisure. If you have any questions, I will be always happy to answer them. So let's go to the next slide.
Actually, Mr. Murali, you can just run through it. I will share the presentation to my club members after the meeting.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, this we would
you can also share my email address. They can on a one-to-one also. I'm happy to share knowledge. No issues on that. Yeah, thank you.
So I'll just run through it. So probably you can just say a word or two, and then we'll go to the next one.
Yeah. So coming back to the growth part. The growth part obviously is, like I told you, a stagnant business does not really do good for the family and also for the future of the family. So it's simple. In simple words, while we all talk about succession planning, we also have to make sure that we plan for the growth in terms of whether it is a diversification of the business or growing of the existing business or getting into new ventures. All these have to be also part of the succession planning. Again, growth can be organic, can be acquired in terms of inorganic growth, where you buy out businesses, smaller businesses, or even services that are given to you in terms of, for example, many companies I know, even small companies, as a matter of fact, they buy out advertisement agencies because they feel it's too expensive to have an advertisement agency from outside. They may as well buy them and then make it as a part of the family business. So growing is another way of ensuring that your succession is not hampered. Risk. Now, when it comes to risks, okay, many of us, I'll just go to the next slide. Yeah, thank you. Many times the family business also suffer losses, mainly because of the decisions made on the spur of the moment by one individual, sometimes maybe a couple of individuals, or maybe a group of individuals. And that kind of decision can put the entire family's assets and also the business at risk. As a matter of fact, a joint decision process needs to be put into place. Joint family consultation also needs to be put into place so that the risk is minimized at the end of the day. Because let's not forget one important aspect in family business. The entire family is also at stake. In simple words, their survival, their regular income, their disposable income, their social stature, all are at risk when there is a risk taken in the family business, which actually ultimately results in the family own personal lives. Governance. There's no need to talk about governance because it's a very simple and right thing to put in place. You need to understand how do you really implement internal controls, checks and balances within the family also. Within the family also. I've seen many families, even today for that matter, that the oldest member of the family is the one who signs the check. Okay. Obviously, this is a very simple and very effective method of internal control, as I would put it as an auditor, because the eldest gentleman or lady for that matter will ask questions before signing the check. Okay, I hope they don't sign just like that blindly. But if they do that, obviously they become the internal controller. They also become the check and balance of the organization. It is not only in India, by the way. As a matter of fact, in China, in the Far East also, this is a very standard practice where the eldest member of the family is allowed to sign the check because he's supposed to be the final point of check and balance and controls. Yeah. Wealth. Building wealth, investment, or looking at investment opportunities to ensure that the family also grows, and how the money that is earned from the family business is wisely invested in assets which are actually going to grow, and how they're going to appreciate, and what kind of ROI, return on investments, can be expected from the wealth that is invested from the family business is also something needs to be planned, like I said, as a part of the succession planning. Wealth. The next point, of course, is transition. This is the critical part, and I would say sometimes a failure can happen in this particular stage, which can actually ruin the entire family. One of the things which I mentioned earlier is that, like I told you, it is not a simple one-day job. It's a process. So which means a transition also has to be a process. It can't be just done, overnight. Like I told you, Tata, okay, the chairman of Tata Group is always seasoned for 5 years before he becomes a chairman. Even today, it's done. Even in TVS, in many of the organizations, they train the top man to make sure that the transition is smooth. Now, if transition is not planned as a part of the planning process itself, then the transition can also jeopardize the entire family business. So transition is actually very critical, and obviously from generation to generation, how it is done is going to affect the business ultimately in terms of success of the family business. Last but not the least, human capital, people. Now, let us accept one important fact. Many times families feel that, I have got my brother, my brother's children, my sister's children. This guy is Harvard, he's come from finance background. My other son is, good in marketing. The other person is very technically oriented, is a good engineer. So the other fellow is, good in, let's say, something research and development. So I'll put him on as a head. Yes, possible. Yes, why not? Why not? Nothing wrong. The question is, many times what we do, I think not only in family, but also in most of the corporates, it happens. We find jobs for people. Let me repeat again. We find jobs for people. We don't find people for jobs. I hope it makes a little bit of sense. So what happens is, when we have family members, we find jobs for them, depending on what we feel he's good at. Okay. we do not really look at a job and then we decide whether this particular boy or girl or my sister, son or brother's daughter is fit for the job. I mean, I'm not getting into any personal, what do you call here? I mean, please don't take it personally, but it's a real fact that many of us feel that, oh, my family is competent enough to manage, the job. But what we do actually in reality is we find jobs for the family members. We do not find, people for the jobs within the family members. So in sometimes or many times rather, it so happens that one or two, maybe a few of the family members may not suit the job. So ultimately what happens is there is a weak point which can actually trigger a series of losses in the family. This is just a very simple reminder to many of us, including me also, that listen, you may have people in the family, but then please do not think that they are the best fit for a particular job that you want them to look after. Now, what are the key things to do here? Okay, you'll be surprised to know that, I'll just go back to the previous slide, please. Yeah. In the West of late, even in Europe for that matter, or in the US, there is a family charter, like a constitution, like for example, family protocol. Like in India, we have a constitution to rule the country. So there are many families, even today, they hire lawyers, they hire professionals to draw a constitution. What's a constitution? A constitution is a written statement or a protocol that serves as a record of the family heritage, the culture, the hopes and ambitions, and how things have to be done to achieve those ambitions. You may think it's too academic. Yes, it is to some extent academic. We do not believe in writing, as you know. In India, we don't believe in writing. We believe in words. Yes, but when it comes to this kind of thing, especially when it has to be passed over to generations, I think writing is a must. So one of the important things that we need to understand, that have we prepared, in case we are having a family business which are to be passed to the next generation, have we prepared a family constitution, or have we really thought about preparing a family chart? Okay. So coming back to this, now what should this charter or constitution contain? What should it have? I have just put in the next slide a simple Navaratna. It has to have 9 stars or 9 beautiful stones. Okay. You may be surprised to see these elements here, but they are very important and very key in families. Like it's our own family, for example. We need to have a spiritual health, which means we need to understand. We may not believe in God, but then we may believe in values. We may believe in social commitments. So we have to have certain value systems. We have to have certain spiritual health, some honesty, ethical practices. That becomes the first of the Navaratna that we need to get into understanding or defining the spiritual health of the family. Second part, physical health. You may say, oh my God, why should I worry about my physical health? Yes, you may have a gym at home. You're quite rich enough to have your own gym or even a racing track or running track. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that is everybody or every member of the family physically fit? What are they doing about it? So which means we need to have understanding of how they are looked after physically. What are the kind of precautions you take? Even the food that we do have to be looked into as a part of the family constitution. You may be again laughing at this small thing, but actually speaking, it's a very important and relevant part, because unless we have good health, no families can actually sustain, because you'll probably end up spending most of the wealth in the hospitals. Third important part is education. What kind of education do we give it to our children? It's not about qualification. I don't know if you have heard about Swami Vivekananda telling about the difference between qualification and education. Vivekananda says that colleges and universities give qualification, but life gives you education. So I'm talking about that education. So what kind of qualification or rather education that you need to impart to your children or the next generation is to be again defined and again have to be carried over generation to generation. Now obviously all work and no play doesn't make sense. So we need to also define recreation. What kind of fun, what kind of sports, outing, picnics, family gathering, family trips or family travel. What kind of do we do? What do we do? What games do we play? What family games together where everybody is involved? Okay. Obviously, this makes the whole family life very joyous. And of course, the next part is the family has to also have a certain commitment to the community. We are not here as an island. Okay, we are a part of the society. So, what kind of contribution does the family do to the community? I don't know if you have, if anybody has worked in Madura courts. I worked in Madura courts for some time, and way back in in the about 90s, when I went to my factory in Madurai, there's an old plaque written almost more than a century ago. It says, the first responsibility of a business is to the society. The first responsibility of any business is to society, which means when you're talking about a family business, you also need to understand what is the contribution that it's likely to make to the society or community. The sixth point, I'm not sure whether the husbands or wives will be so happy about it, but believe me, it's a reality. Whether we like it or not, it's a part of reality. Relationship with the spouses. Okay. We may not accept it, but invariably, it also happens that spouses coming from outside families, it can be son-in-laws, daughter-in-laws, again, nothing offensive, please don't take it personally, do have their own views, and therefore, how do you maintain the relationship with the family? That's another thing that has to be spelled out, defined, even if not 100% practice, but again, to be understood. I say this is the family, this is how the family practices the relationship. The next point, of course, the point number 7 is relationship with the children. How do you relate to the children? What kind of children, how do you raise them? What values do you inculcate? What values do you teach them? And of course, the next part is, of course, the home sweet home. The whole thing is grounded. The family business is grounded at home. So obviously, you cannot be away from home, which means there has to be some unity, some congruence. There's some sort of harmony within the family that actually leads to success in the family business. And of course, the last point, important thing is financial stability. As you can see, most of this charter does not include business part here. It's more to do with social part. So the financial stability is actually the last one, because if these 8 things are taken care, believe me, the 9th one is just a cakewalk, according to me. So this is just a very simple way I have put it for everybody to understand how does one go about understanding the family constitution. Leah Aycock says that the only rock I know that stays steady and the only institution that works is family, which means the family also has a lot of contribution to the family business. Some of the quotes I've just mentioned here, Uday Kotak, sorry. Okay, and he was actually worried before he joined his family business, saying that, listen, I may not have individuality before he joined the family business. Azim Premji, okay, Azim Premji was actually supposed to be fired by one of the shareholders before he took over the company or become the chairman. Okay, he said somebody wanted me to be away from the company. Okay, and somebody says a lot of family members worked in joint commodities family business. There's a classic case of capitalism at work and socialism at home. You can browse, think over it. Very nice quote I thought I should share with you. And last but not the least, I've given some photographs of some of the people who are successful in family businesses, Jindals, the Mittals, the Godrejas, the Mahindras, just for us to have an understanding, even the Tatas for that matter, Bajaj. And last but not the least, a small note to say a big thank you for your patience. And I hope I made some sense to all of you. And I'll be very happy to answer any questions. I hope it made some use to you. And I'm sure, like I told you, it will probably make you think. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. Thank you once again, Rotary Club of Guindy, for this excellent opportunity. And it's really great to meet fellow Rotarians like you. I come from Madras Central, Rotary Club of Madras Central. And I also am a member of the health, part of our team here. So anyway, I'm sure you're also doing a very good job. I also went through your, profile. You're doing a very good job in terms of contribution to society. And I wish you continued successes, and not only to the club, but to every member of the Rotary Club of Guindy. Thank you once again. And if you have any questions, I'm open to answer. Thank you. Over to the host, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Murli. It was wonderful. And we have a very good attendance today because a lot of people here are running their own family businesses. I'm sure it would have benefited a lot of them. Are you able to see the screen? Memento to...
Sir. No, Sharath.
No. Okay.
No, only we will say black.
Just give me 10 seconds, then we can take on the questions. 1 second.
Yes.
ஓகே ஓகே சரத்.
Is it clear now?
இல்லை இப்போ ஓப்பன் பண்ணுங்க. இஸ் ஓகே now okay.
Okay. As practice, we give a memento to our speaker of the week. So, as a token of appreciation, here is a small memento from the Rotary Foundation. A generous gift to the Rotary Foundation has been made in honor of Mr. V. Muralidharan by the members of the Rotary Club of Guindy. Thank you for being a good guide to ignite passion and values to the youth to carry on the rich legacy and responsibility entrusted to them. And in the bottom part, since you are already a Rotarian, I need not tell you, thanks a lot, sir. Thank you.
I request members kindly raise your hand so that we can unmute you and let you ask questions.
Mr. Venkat, you can unmute yourself.
Yes.
I think your speech was so crystal clear. I think nobody has any questions.
Oh my God. It makes me worried sometimes.
I only have a point of appreciation if I am allowed to talk.
Please go ahead.
Coming from a HR recruitment field,
Yes,
one
ma'am.
thing which you told was, choosing the same family member without assessing for that business may not be right. I was super happy about it, That point was really impressed.
Yeah, thank you. As a matter of fact, let me continue on the HR part of it. There is also succession planning in the corporate world. I'm sure you must be knowing about it. If you're talking about a corporate world, if you do not follow a succession planning in a corporate world, you may also have trouble. Suddenly your chief accountant or chief general manager resigns, the whole company will come into a big trouble. So I don't know whether you're practicing it, but I recommend that you please look into a corporate succession planning as well. This actually is applicable to a corporate situation also in a way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question from my son, Saurish.
Yes, sir.
Can you spotlight on Saurish and unmute him? Hope he doesn't ask anything scandalous.
It's okay.
Yeah, Saurish, you can.
Yeah. So hi. So before asking my question, I would just like to thank you for giving this speech because you gave a lot of insight about the power dynamics in a family business. So my question is, how do you choose a successor and what are the prerequisite skills and interests needed in a successor for him or her to lead a company, small or large?
Yeah, I think I made a small, this thing here. I said, listen, do not find jobs for people. Find people for jobs. In simple words, you need to define the role that you want to be performed in an organization. Okay? It could be HR, it could be marketing, it could be finance, it could be even research and development, it could be technical, whatever. Okay? A job demands certain skill set. Okay? So if you start from that and then look at the person within the family, then you'll have a different view of the same person. Okay? What we do normally is, I think I'll probably take the help of the HR person here. We look at fitment ratio. Say we look at, okay, he knows 50% of it, so let us put him as a head of that department. I don't think 50% is sufficient in an important role in any function for that matter. So I think the answer lies in being very honest with ourselves. Listen, this is maybe my son, my own son or my own daughter. The question is, I have to be, I would say, very, very curt and saying that, is my son really capable of doing justice to this role? It may not be easy. I'm not saying, because see, unfortunately what happens is in family businesses, emotions also run very high. Okay. So we are having a mix of emotion, mix of economy, mix of business, mix of, profitability. All this is not easy to handle. But again, if you are really able to separate that emotion part of it and look at your own kith or kin and say, listen, I have this job. Will I employ him? Like, for example, you are recruiting a person. How do you do that? He is not a member of your family. How do you choose an employee? You choose based on the suitability of the person to a particular job. The same has to be applied here. There's no, second opinion about it. Yes, if you are compromising on that, don't forget that you're also compromising on the business. I hope I've answered it.
Yeah, yes,
It's
sure.
about being very clear about what the job or what is the role required, and whether this particular person, of the family is capable. Or sometimes it's possible that he's good, but he needs some training. Or he may probably become the leader after some time, and let us train him on that. Yes, you can probably put him as a, an assistant or, a person to be groomed. That's fine. I don't know if you're aware of this. Most of the Tata employees are actually starting their jobs as an apprentice, right?
Yeah.
Apprentice, okay? In the factory, in the iron steel or in Tata Motors, you go and see, they all start with apprentice. They've all been apprentices also. So it's about how the jobs are learned, and then you grow in the job and the kind of role that you want to play. I hope I've answered this question.
Oh yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Satya, unmute.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Murli.
Yes.
Satya here. Okay,
Yes,
in
Mr.
fact,
Satya.
you kind of answered what I was supposed to ask, because I was observing you were talking about succession planning mostly in family business, and I was wondering, because I'm from the corporate world,
Okay.
I was wondering why you didn't touch upon, because that's also very important. Because I felt, at least in the family business, stakeholders are within the family. In the corporate world, you have outside stakeholders. It's all the more important there to address their needs.
Yeah.
Because, and of course, the employees are also
Mm.
stakeholders in today's corporate world with ESOPs and other things.
Correct.
All the more, we've been asked to work, feel like a family member and work.
Yeah.
And, most organizations make sure that these employees also have the entrepreneurial nature in them.
Absolutely.
Look at from that angle. Anyway, you've answered that because it's very,
Thank you.
I feel it's very important.
Mr.
And
Satya,
today most corporate,
Yeah. I was also in corporate world for 22 years. Okay.
Mhm.
All right. And whenever I used to interview somebody, I used to say, he says, sir, what is the future for me in this company? I said, my chair is ready waiting for you. In fact, I offered somebody a job, by the way, as an assistant to me. I mean, I'm talking about some 30 years ago. And after getting the offer letter, this is again a corporate scenario, please. The gentleman came back after a week and says, sir, thank you very much. I don't want this job. I said, I have given you an appointment letter. The salary that you asked for, the position, the designation, the responsibility, everything is fine. What's the problem? He says, sir, you are only 35. Okay. I will have to wait for you to die or retire, whichever comes first, to take your chair. That was his answer. So, I mean, in a corporate...
I think very important today, because corporates, as you rightly said, it's not about, fitment. It's about, showing the career path to the employees are more critical these days.
Yes.
Because people look at their career path.
Yeah.
And very importantly, yes, as you rightly said, it's clearly you have to define the role, and, you have to find the right people for the right job.
So when he asked me this question, sir, you have to die or you have to retire to take up your chair, I said, you think I'm a fool to sit down here for 25 years in the same chair? I also want to grow a bus. That was my answer.
Absolutely.
Okay, everybody has to grow, no?
Correct. Very much. Very true.
Yeah, that's how it is. Anyway, thank you, Mr. Satya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sridhar?
My pleasure.
Sridhar?
It was actually asked me.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. So this is, thanks for your excellent session. So this is my son who's taken up the family business. Okay. I'm a first generation entrepreneur.
Very good.
So
very good.
He's just finished his studies and joined. So the
Yeah.
question he also
Yeah.
has, and I also have in my mind,
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
how, whether to give a protective environment for him to grow and take him, handhold him and allow him to grow in the company, or should I leave him as a fish in the water so that he can swim and come up? So what should be a good strategy for his growth or his capability to, he's now got a decent training in all the
Good.
technical,
Good.
financial, commercials. He's got a quite good, I had given sufficient time for him to get trained in all the aspects of the business. So far he's trained well in the business aspect as such. But further to, as you told, to take over the chair,
Yeah.
what is the kind of period which I can look forward, and how we should strategize?
Can I ask you a personal question? How old is your son?
He is 24.
24. Good. There are two things I'll recommend to you right now, but I'll tell you the long term what is to be done. Immediately ask him to write an SOP. What's an SOP? Statement of purpose. Okay. is normally written in any entrance examination for an MBA course or any university in the US, as a matter of fact. Okay. At 24, let him write this SOP and show it to you. Okay. You can definitely see or transparently understand what is his mind and what is his thinking, what is the level of his thought process, and what is beyond anything else his vision. Okay. This is just an immediate thing for you to start looking at in a very different manner. Okay. You may have known him, obviously, or he's your son, and you have a lot of emotional attached to him. That's fine. But then when you ask him to write an SOP, okay, it has to be a professional write-up. Okay, you just judge it in a very impartial way and see what has he written. Okay, and then this is one part. You just keep it on the one side. Second part is the critical part is when he's going to take over the mantle after you, or even with you for that matter. Is he good, or is he having a basic knowledge of all the functions in the organization? Whether it's manufacturing, finance, marketing, HR, for that matter, IT. Now, the most important thing I would recommend you to focus on him is man management, HR. A lot of people think HR is, it's not a very great thing. Honestly, no. In fact, every manager, every owner, or every entrepreneur should be a first human resource or human resource manager. So if he's trained to manage people, if he's able to handle people of different natures, different age groups, different technical knowledge, different bandwidth of experience, if he's able to handle them, that's what you need to train him on. Once he does that, plus the functional expertise that he gains from finance, IT, marketing and things like that, he's fit to become the chairman of the company. Right? So two things. One is, look at his vision today. He's 24. It's very good. Okay. Ask him to write it and keep it, print it in a paper and file it in some place. Ask him to look at it after 5 years. You also look at it after 5 years. You'll see the thought process has changed in that 5 years. And had he written this 5 years ago, you would have seen a lot of change even now. Okay. Okay. So my recommendation is that one is, please ask him to write an SOP, which will tell you or reflect even for himself. For example, when he starts writing on this, he will start thinking 10 times what he's writing. Okay, number one. So he'll probably have to be honest about himself. That is a good reflection about his own, expression of what he wants to do. Second part, you start giving him training in man management, people management. That's the key. That's the key. Okay. The crux of the matter is how you manage. Because even you as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you're not doing all the jobs, are you? You're getting people to work for you. And that's what he has to learn, in simple words. But again, even to get work from others, you need to be an expert in all those functions. That's why I said, please let him become a functional expert in some of the most of the key functions, and then look at man management. There are 6 modules I can share with you later on. I'm teaching, Succession Family Business MBA. I'll share these 6 modules. They're just titles actually, but it'll tell you how to prepare your son or the next generation to take over the matter. Very simple thing. HR, vision.
Thank you.
I hope I've
so
answered
much.
your question. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Bala, do we have any more questions, or can we take it offline?
Yeah, can we take it on offline, sir? We move on to next agenda.
Sir, I will share your email details with our members.
Please do.
Presentation.
Please do. Please
and,
do.
And of course, they'll be reaching you. I'm sure a lot of people have some questions, but they don't want to ask in the forum.
Sure, sure.
So
see, I believe in one thing. I believe in sharing. Okay. So I recommend that please cut and paste whatever you want from my presentation.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Now it's now time for the announcement from the secretary's desk.
Please.
Today we have a trio celebrating their birthdays today. Rotarians Amar and Sengadir along with Annette Gautam are celebrating birthdays today. Wish you happy birthday, Rotarians and Annette. And Praveen Sridhar celebrate Annette of Sridhar V celebrate birthday on 24th July. Sarah Annette Sadiq celebrates birthday on 24th July. Rotarian Magesh celebrate his birthday on 25th July. Chanakyan Anat of Kalaimamani celebrate birthday on 28th July. Thank you.
Yeah, Bala.
I now welcome.
Yeah, Bala, maybe those people whom you announced as birthdays and anniversaries, they want to announce some gift for the joy of giving. You know, they are waiting to tell you.
Yeah.
Please allow them.
Praveen.
We can't hear you.
Praveen Sridhar celebrate birthday day after tomorrow, 24th.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'll be happy to contribute, sir.
Oh, thank you, Praveen. Thank
Happy
you.
birthday, Praveen, in advance.
Yeah, thanks for the spotlight. I am contributing 5,000 for Gautam's birthday.
Okay. Madam, convey our birthday wishes to Gautam.
Bala, the
Thank
more
you,
the
Radha.
spotlight, the more contribution you're going to get.
More zeros will add.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I now welcome Rotary Middaji to offer a vote of thanks. Welcome, Middaji.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The most pleasurable task is always to give a vote of thanks because you have the power to thank anybody you want. Sharath, I'll start with you. You had displayed the photographs of all the Rotarians. I was just wondering how come we look so handsome and beautiful in those photographs, whereas in reality we don't. So please run this in every meeting. Next was Jagibai, who took us back to those wonderful years. It was such a nostalgic journey. Great. Venugopal, you reminded us back to Hoina, the one institute where our heart is. Hoina, home of Indian nations. These children, they love to see it as much as we love to see them. It was just wonderful. And our guest, Mr. Muralidharan, you have taken us through the world of business, whether it's corporate world or the family business. You have touched upon such points where we never imagined. No business person thinks that he would prematurely die and who would take over. It is such an insight that everybody must have a succession plan. And there has to be a system. Not only, okay, my son has to become the owner of the company, obviously, or the daughter. But what if they don't agree? Or what if they are not capable? So the ways you have pointed out is really exemplary. And I think every business person, every entrepreneur must take this clue that you must have a succession plan, which takes a couple of years. All of a sudden, you can't appoint anybody, or all of a sudden, you can't change the course. Like you said, Tatas, they train their successors 5 years well in advance. So probably every child in the business or who are planning to become successors must be trained, just like a doctor who is shown around each department as an intern. Similarly, as you mentioned, HR, finance, every damn thing has to be done. This transition is what you have focused on. And we have learned what we never learned earlier. So thank you, Mr. Muralidharan, once again. Thank you, all the members who have participated today. And you are all going to benefit from Mr. Muralidharan's talk because we are all looking for whether we are entrepreneurs or whether we are corporate workers, anybody. So thank you once again, and thank you, our guests who have come today, all the Rotaractors and the Interactors, and our guests. Thank you, all of you, from the bottom. Thanks once again.
Thank you, Middaji. Thank you so much. Let's all rise for the national anthem.
Rotary Club of Guindy is adjourned. Time for fellowship. Thank you.